Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, stocks on Wall Street recovered some of the previous day's decline on Thursday despite worries about the economy. Tech stocks helped push the Nasdaq to yet another new high. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, there's a clearly discrepancy between what's happening to the economy versus the equity market. And the market that is leading is obviously the Nasdaq, the tech sector, and the growth stocks. If you look at the Nasdaq, it climbed by 1.1% yesterday, closing at newest high as the tech gained its very strong run over yesterday. Some of the other growth stocks like bio and also the renewable energy did some decline, but overall the tech sector led the market. In terms of the macro side, the Labor Department reported that the jobless claims totaled 1.106 million last week, well above expectation of 923,000. Clearly, there is a concern about the climbing of new COVID-19 patients. That's happening since global scale, definitely happening in Korea as well as Europe, and overall this is putting some pressure for the market. I think that the uncertainty for the overall market should remain somewhat, despite that the tech sector and the Nasdaq will continue to run on the basis of strong earnings. The reason for that is because, once again, the sentiment seems to be cooling in regards to the economic growth rate recovery because of the COVID-19 incident, and that seems to be the case for the global economy overall. So we are expecting the overall the volatility might be coming for the equity market, but not to the trend where it will start the massive decline, but it's just that people will need more confirmation for economies to recover in order for the equity market to show further strong rise.
Well, the Korean market's also recovering from big losses yesterday. The Kospi now back up above 2,300 points. What was driving the trade today?
Yes, yesterday, if you look at it, Korean market plummeted. It showed 3.6% decline. The Nasdaq also declined quite significantly. And the reason for that kind of decline is because of the huge rise that we saw from the beginning of this year. Before this kind of crash, we had Kospi rising almost 10%, Nasdaq rising by almost 25%. And from the bottom, Nasdaq was up almost 100%. So we clearly needed some kind of breather. On top of that, the concern about the COVID-19 incident, we are seeing record high numbers. And the government is saying that the possibility of additional shutdowns could happen if this kind of new patients rise happening. But despite all that, Kospi had recovered today because U.S. market was very strong yesterday. As I told you that Nasdaq was up about 1% and S&P was up 0.3% yesterday. Obviously, that kind of flowed through to Korea. But Korea also has some kind of volatilities, and we did see Nasdaq going down by more than 1% today, and Kospi basically, losing most of its steam during the day. But towards the end of the day, it did recover, and the Kospi was up 1.3%, and Nasdaq was up 0.6%. I think that we need more numbers in the future. We need to see the real earnings story. We need to see real economic recovery story. Without those, we think that the Kospi and Nasdaq will show volatility going into the future. Some positive news, though, is that the possibility of capital gains tax, the largest shareholders' requirement, or the ones that needs to pay the taxes, the total amount of investment will remain to be about $1 billion. It was expected to go down to 0.3 billion in year 2023 or 22, but it seems that government is considering that this will not change in the future. If that's the case, definitely it's a positive news. And the liquidity condition remains to be very strong in Korea. So therefore, it should support the Korean equity market. At least it's not going to result into a massive decline in terms of share prices.
Well, speaking of real numbers, last month we saw Korea's producer prices rising just barely from the month before by 0.2%, but it was a rise for the second month in a row. We're almost out of time, but what stands out to you about these numbers?
Yes, I think that most of this rise is probably due to the overall oil price rise and some of the demand pickup. But I don't think that this kind of price rise can continue because the third quarter economic growth rate or recovery seems to be quite weak for the time being because of the COVID-19. So we need to watch out how strong these numbers will be. And also we probably need to look at more of a consumer price numbers. We need to see demand pick up in order for the overall margins and overall economic conditions to be good in the future. So we'll watch closely of what's happening to consumer price in the future.
Indeed. All right, Mr. Yu, thanks so much for coming on today and have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you very much.